For 25 years, I called him my brother. When Jacob asked me to be his guarantor, I didn't hesitate for a second. If only I knew that signature would cost me everything I had built in my lifetime. The friendship that would cost me everything started 25 years ago in the faculty room of Phoenix Lincoln High School. Jacob Nelson and I were both young teachers then, full of dreams and ideals. We'd stay after school grading papers and planning lessons, talking about our futures. When I got married, he was my best man. When his father died, I was the one who helped him through the funeral arrangements. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. By 2023, our lives had taken different paths. I had retired after 30 years of teaching and opened a small hardware store in downtown Phoenix. Nothing fancy, just enough to keep me busy and supplement my pension. Jacob had tried his hand at various businesses: import-export, real estate flipping, even a brief stint in food trucking. Nothing ever seemed to stick, but he always had grand plans and that infectious optimism that made you want to believe in him. The call came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was arranging inventory when my phone buzzed with Jacob's name. "Leonard, brother." His voice carried that familiar excitement. "I need to see you. I've got the opportunity of a lifetime, but I need your help." Something in his tone made me set down the box of screws I was holding. We met that afternoon at our usual spot, the small diner near the old Greyhound station where we'd been meeting for coffee for over 2 decades. Jacob looked good, better than he had in years. New suit, expensive watch, the kind of confidence that comes with success, or at least the appearance of it. "I'm finally going to make it big, Leonard," he said, stirring his coffee with the silver spoon that clinked against the ceramic mug. "Remember that construction contact I told you about? The one in Scottsdale? It's happening. Luxury condos, California investors, the whole package. But I need capital to secure the materials contract." I'd heard variations of this story before. The big break that was always just around the corner. The investors who were ready to change everything. But something about this felt different. Maybe it was the way he looked me in the eye when he spoke, or maybe it was just my own desire to see my old friend succeed after so many years of near misses. He pulled out his phone and showed me photos of an empty lot in North Scottsdale, architectural renderings that looked professional, and what appeared to be email correspondence with Golden State Development Group. The numbers he mentioned were staggering. A $2.5 million project that would net him close to $400,000 in profit within 8 months. "I've already secured 60% of the funding," he explained, scrolling through what looked like bank statements on his phone, "but I need the remaining $350,000 to lock down the materials contract with Southwest Building Supply. The timing is crucial. If I don't move by next Friday, the whole deal falls through." But what came next caught me completely off guard. "I need you to be my guarantor," Jacob said, and the words hung in the air between us like smoke from the diner's grill. "Just for the bank loan, $350,000. I'll pay it back in 6 months, maximum 8. You know I'm good for it." I set down my coffee mug, the sound sharper than I intended. "Jacob, that's a lot of money. More than my store makes in 3 years. I know. He leaned forward, his hands spread on the small Formica table. "But think about it. This is my chance, our chance. When this project takes off, I'll cut you in as a partner. We're talking about serious money here, not pocket change." The smart part of my brain, the part that had survived 30 years of managing classroom budgets and household expenses, was screaming warnings. But the other part, the part that remembered helping Jacob through his messy divorce, lending him money for his mother's cancer treatments, sharing countless meals and confidences, that part wanted to help. "What exactly would I be guaranteeing?" I asked, though I already knew I was weakening. "Just the standard business loan paperwork. If for some reason, and there won't be a reason, but if something goes wrong, the bank has you as backup. It's a formality, really. Like insurance you never use." That night, I lay awake next to my wife, Maya, staring at the ceiling. She'd gone to bed early with one of her migraines, unaware of the conversation that was keeping me sleepless. I thought about all the times Jacob had been there for us. When our daughter Emma needed emergency surgery and we were short on the hospital deposit, Jacob had appeared with a cashier's check. No questions asked. When the store's air conditioning died during Phoenix's brutal July heat wave, he'd shown up with a crew of HVAC guys, refusing to take a penny for the repairs. Maybe it was time to return the favor. Maybe this was how real friendship worked, taking calculated risks for the people who matter most. The bank appointment was set for the following Friday. Wells Fargo branch in downtown Phoenix, all marble and mahogany, the kind of place that made you feel important just by walking through the doors. The loan officer, a sharp-eyed man named Mr. Peterson, walked us through the paperwork with professional efficiency. "Mr. Hall," he addressed me directly, "you understand that as the guarantor, you are legally responsible for this debt should Mr. Nelson default on payments." I nodded, though my mouth felt dry. "And you've reviewed your assets and confirm you can cover this obligation if necessary?" Another nod. The papers felt heavy in my hands. Jacob was all charm and confidence, answering every question with detailed explanations about materials, suppliers, construction timelines, and profit projections. He had photographs of the building site, architectural renderings, even what looked like correspondence with California investors. It all seemed so real, so thoroughly planned. He mentioned specific details that impressed even Mr. Peterson: the project's environmental certification requirements, the timeline for utility connections, even the specific grades of steel and concrete specified by the architectural firm. This wasn't some fly-by-night operation. This was a man who had done his homework. But then something strange happened as we were signing the final documents. My phone buzzed with a text message from my nephew Jake, who worked in construction management around Phoenix. "Uncle Leonard, heard through the grapevine you might be involved in something with Jacob. Be careful. Word around the industry is that Scottsdale project hit major zoning issues months ago." I felt my blood run cold, but Jacob was watching me expectantly and Mr. Peterson was waiting with professional patience. The rational thing would have been to excuse myself, to step outside and call Jake back to demand answers. Instead, I signed my name. 25 years of friendship won over 5 minutes of doubt, but that was only the beginning of what I was about to discover. For the first 2 months, everything seemed fine. Jacob would call regularly with updates about permits, material deliveries, construction progress. He even sent photos of excavation work that looked legitimate enough. The loan payments were coming out of his account automatically, just as promised. Then the calls became less frequent. When I did reach him, he sounded distracted, always in meetings or dealing with some bureaucratic delay. "You know how these city offices are, Leonard. Everything takes 3 times longer than it should, but we're moving forward, don't worry." The first payment he missed, I wasn't even notified. The bank's automated system simply shifted to the backup account, mine. $2,847 came out of my checking account without warning. When I called Jacob, he was apologetic and embarrassed. "Temporary cash flow issue. The investor's payment was delayed by some California banking regulation. I'll transfer the money back to you tomorrow." He didn't. The second missed payment took $3,200 from my account. This time I drove to his apartment complex in Tempe, but the building manager told me he hadn't seen him in weeks. His phone went straight to voicemail. A cold dread settled in my stomach as I sat in my pickup truck outside his building, watching other residents come and go, living their normal lives while mine was quietly falling apart. That's when I decided to investigate on my own. I drove to Scottsdale using money I couldn't afford to spend on gas to check the construction site address Jacob had given me. The lot was indeed empty, but not because construction was about to begin. It had a foreclosure notice from Maricopa County, dated 6 months earlier. The real estate agent I called told me no construction permits had been applied for in that area in over 18 months. The zoning was still residential, not commercial. There was no Golden State Development Group in the California Business Registry. The architectural firm Jacob had mentioned didn't exist. Standing in that dusty lot, looking out at the Camelback Mountains that should have been dotted with luxury condos, I realized the truth. There was no construction project, there were no California investors. There probably never had been. My oldest friend had looked me in the eyes, shaken my hand, and stolen my life savings with a smile. But the worst was yet to come. When I returned to Phoenix, I found 3 certified letters waiting for me. The bank was demanding immediate payment of the full loan amount, $350,000 plus interest and penalties. My hardware store, my house, everything I had worked 30 years to build was now at risk because of a signature I had given in the name of friendship. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Maya, spreading out all the documents like pieces of a puzzle I was finally ready to solve. She had always been the cautious one, the voice of reason I should have listened to. "We'll figure this out," she said quietly, though I could see the fear in her eyes. "There has to be something we can do." I called my attorney, Robert Ortiz, a practical man who had handled the purchase of my store years earlier. His advice was straightforward and devastating. "Leonard, legally you are responsible for this debt, unless you can prove fraud, which is extremely difficult, or unless Jacob surfaces and pays, you'll have to cover it." But then he said something that sparked an idea. "However, if you can demonstrate that he obtained this loan under false pretenses, using forged documents or false representations, that changes things completely." But Jacob had no idea what I had been quietly preparing for months. I spent the next 3 weeks becoming a detective. I requested copies of all the loan documents from Wells Fargo. I contacted every business license office in Arizona, searching for any record of Jacob's construction company. I even hired a private investigator named Jennifer Walsh to track his movements and financial records. What we discovered was far worse than I had imagined. This wasn't Jacob's first fraud. He had used the same scheme with at least 4 other guarantors across the Southwest: Las Vegas, Albuquerque, Denver, and El Paso. Each time he had found a longtime friend or family member, convinced them to guarantee a loan for a fake business venture, then disappeared with the money. Jennifer found him living under the name Michael Rivera in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, where U.S. authorities couldn't easily reach him. He had purchased a beachfront condo and was running a small surf shop, funded entirely by the money he had stolen from people who had trusted him. The photos she showed me were like a knife in my chest. Jacob, tanned and relaxed, living the good life on money that was destroying 5 different families. But here's what Jacob didn't know about me. 30 years of teaching high school had made me very, very patient and very, very thorough. I had also spent those years learning how to research, how to document everything, and how to build airtight cases for academic integrity violations. I contacted the other victims through the private investigator, and we formed what our lawyers called a fraud consortium. Together, we had enough evidence to file federal charges for wire fraud, bank fraud, and organized criminal activity. I also discovered that Jacob had made one crucial mistake. He had used the same fake business documents and forged bank statements for all 5 loans. The investigation took 10 months, but eventually U.S. and Mexican authorities cooperated through an international banking fraud treaty to freeze his assets and begin extradition proceedings. The condo he had purchased with our money was seized by Mexican authorities. His surf shop was closed and its accounts frozen. The breakthrough came when Jennifer discovered that Jacob had been stupid enough to use the same laptop for all his fraudulent activities. And that laptop contained email evidence of his coordination with a document forger in Los Angeles and a fake business registration service in Nevada. The federal prosecutor who took our case, Assistant U.S. Attorney Maria Santos, told us this was one of the most well-documented fraud cases she'd ever seen. "Mr. Hall," she said, "your methodical approach to gathering evidence has made this prosecution almost effortless." In the end, I recovered about 70% of what Jacob had stolen. Not everything, but enough to save my house and store and enough to cover the legal fees for all 5 victims. The other guarantors weren't as fortunate. By the time we acted, 2 of them had already lost their homes. The last time I saw Jacob was at his sentencing hearing in federal court. He looked smaller, somehow older, the confidence completely drained from his face. When our eyes met across the courtroom, he mouthed the words, "I'm sorry, Leonard." But some betrayals cut too deep for apologies to heal. The judge sentenced him to 8 years in federal prison and ordered full restitution to all victims. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the principle that people who exploit trust and friendship should face real consequences. I learned that justice doesn't always mean getting everything back exactly as it was. Sometimes it's simply about ensuring that the people who hurt you face consequences for their actions. And sometimes it's about discovering that you're stronger and more resourceful than you ever knew. The friendship that cost me nearly everything also taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. That trust, once broken, can never truly be repaired. But that doesn't mean you have to let the people who betrayed you win. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever had your generosity used against you, know that you're not powerless. Document everything, seek help, and never give up on getting justice. The truth has a way of surfacing, even when it seems buried forever. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please subscribe and share your own experiences in the comments. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let someone else's betrayal define your future.